Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, good to be back with you again. And this is once again going to be kind of a little different type of video than I've done in the past, and then I think you'll be able to find just about anywhere in the world of sports simulation YouTube, knowing how large and how well developed it is. So what I wanted to talk with you about here is the newest issue here of the new Sports Games Journal, which just started Volume 9, Issue 1. This is James Marshall, who came out with this one and released it actually for free. And I actually haven't read the whole thing, believe it or not, because the first article I thought was so interesting I wanted to talk about it here. You can find this on just about every Facebook group. It's on Tabletop Sports. It's probably on a couple other different message boards and stuff. James did a good job of getting this one pushed out here. But his big question here is... why is it so hard for people to care about the replay? And this is something that I think is a real major problem. There's a little bit of talk here about how people just are not reading as much about sports anymore, right? So it says here, an Esquire article I read mentioned about how every year there are fewer sports themed books on the bestseller list than in years past, because there's a sea change that is taking place in the way that we consume sports. I mean, that might be true. I don't know. I'd be interested to know what you have to think about that. I do think that while there has been sort of a sea change in terms of how sports are talked about, I tend to think of that more in terms of pro gambling than anything else, right? The sport is still the same, and the stories are still the same. I would say that the problem may be that there are not quite as many compelling and very good and easy to read books out there about certain sports subjects, and it might be that a lot of the lower hanging fruit type subjects have already been taken up. There's a lot of interesting things about here about talking about how it's so difficult to get other people to interact with our replays and to really care about it, beyond just the fact that people might, take in content about sports replays in a different way than they did, say, in the 1980s or the 1970s, right? But there is an interesting thing that he notes here, right? So the readers aren't there for every dive roll, every mouse click, every fateful moment that you are. Well, I mean, if you watch some of my videos, you'll be there for at least some of the moments. I might take you through them really quickly, though, and that's one of the problems that you might have, right? You say, hey, I don't like the pace of this guy plays. This isn't the way that I'd play. I would slow this down a lot. You might not be trying to finish up a bunch of videos right before having your work meetings, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, part of the problem is that narrating the exploits of the 69 Mets or the 86 Red Sox while potentially engaging fails to carry the same weight or gravity as I don't know, playing the game yourself or as watching the game or whatever. The thing that's missing here, and the thing that I think that James really hits on, is the miss of this emotional connection with the reader. That's the thing that's most important, and that's really the thing that is hardest to develop. That's hard to develop whether you're doing sports stuff on YouTube or whether you're writing a blog about like whatever hobby it is you might have, or about religion or about politics or whatever. Creating that sort of emotional connection with the reader or with the watcher, telling them something that they care about and that they're interested in, is not easy to do. It really is not easy to do. So his advice here is pretty interesting, right? So he does go on to say, yeah, in the old days, we waited for newsletters because we'd have something, and then nowadays replays are kind of everywhere. Something I don't fully agree with. There are actually not that many people doing replays. What you'll find if you look closely on certain forums is that you kind of get the same guys doing multiple replays. There are some people who will do like 5 replays at once. 2 at once, I think, is probably too many. But there are people who will do multiple projects at once, and that's part of the problem. How do you navigate the conundrum, which I think is interesting? Lower the expectations, first of all. If people are taking the time to read what you write, then you've already been victorious. I think that that's correct. I'm amazed that people will watch the stuff that I put out. I'm very, very amazed by it. Don't be disheartened by the lack of response. Yeah, that's something that you need to get used to in the internet era, because people will not always have something to say. And on the same token, I mean, if somebody's writing about their project, whether they have like a single game they're talking about or like a full project or whatever, try to like interact with them. Most of what we want is not money. We want interaction with people about something that we care about, right? He does say here that the joy of simulating games, of crafting narratives, lies in the doing, not necessarily in the recognition, which is absolutely true. But I would also say that part of that joy lies in the back and forth that we can have with each other and talking about the game and enjoying some of the old moments together and talking about how interesting it is that this might have happened or that might have happened. Right. So The reason why, now this is really the key, I think, of this here is that everything that we care about when it comes to sports, everything that we care about when it comes to old stories, we care about because they are tales that were spun by sports writers or narrators that took us straight into the heart of the action. And that's the hardest thing of all. It's very, very difficult to do that. That's not a craft that comes easy. And I would argue that it comes with a lot of time and with a lot of patience and with a lot of experimentation. And that, I think it is something that is definitely possible. In fact, as I've said before on a prior video, I know that is possible because I started to care a lot about certain Football Manager creators and their replays using that game. Or I say replays, it's not really a replay, it's a project, a save. The reason why I started to care about them is because I started to watch and I became aware of what was happening and all of the meta of the save and all this other stuff. And you find yourself starting to cheer for a certain guy who might be underperforming or something like that. That's the sort of thing you really should pay a lot of attention to, right? Once again, we're trying to take the replays and the projects away from just numbers and box scores and that sort of thing, and instead give it the human element, the human touch, which is the thing that gets people to care about it. Anyway, that's sort of my take on this. There's not a huge amount of answers or suggestions for doing this other than that you should remember that people tend to care about other people. People tend to be impressed by stories of people doing things that people do and are not quite as interested in numbers that are sort of thrown around willy-nilly, because as interesting as it might be that, I don't know, your double plays are down 50%. I saw a ballpark baseball replay just this morning where the double play numbers were down 50% in both leagues. As interesting as that is to talk about, that's not really a story. That's just a number. And numbers don't do much. They tend to be sterile. We can examine them and look at them, and then we kind of go back into our corners and do whatever it is that we do. They don't tend to inspire. They don't tend to make us fans. They don't tend to make us upset. They don't tend to get people to write out large flame wars or anything like that. It's people who do that sort of thing. So I'd recommend recognizing at least the difference between both of those. Anyway, as I said, this is once again I'll show you this here again, the new Sports Game Journal by James Marshall. I would definitely recommend picking this up. It may not be the flashiest thing I've ever seen in my life, but it works pretty well. And you might want to check it out and get in on the action and go talk with people about it. Talk to you later. Bye.